Do you think UFOs, the paranormal, weird history, cryptozoology, and outsider art are pretty darn cool? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to High Strangeness with your host, Steve Berg.
The video version. Hello, friends. Welcome back to High Strangeness. Tonight, I have my great buddy, a dude I've known for, I don't even know how many years, but he was one of the first guys to actually ever ask me to be on his show. My guest tonight is the one, the only, Ryan Sprague. Ryan, how are you doing, man?
I'm good, Steve. Man, this is like a dream come true. It's come full circle.
It has.
Can I tell you quickly like how I
Please.
found out about you? I've been
Yeah.
dying to tell you this story.
Oh, please do. Please do.
Okay, so of course, like many, I saw you on Drunk History doing the Roswell case. My girlfriend at the time, now fiance, we were watching the episode. We loved the show, and when I saw that Roswell was going to be on there, I was like, "Ooh, who they gonna get? Who they gonna get?" And your beautiful face showed up, and you did the case such justice that I was like, I can't believe I'm watching a Comedy Central show right now. But it wasn't even that, man. It was the last moments where you actually like tipped your glass to ufologists and you used the word ufologists. And I'm not kidding you, man. It almost brought a tear to my eye. I was like, wow, we've just been acknowledged on Drunk History. And I immediately started Googling you and looking at your work and your resume. And then I saw that you were on Tim Binnall's show. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, he actually talks to other people about UFOs too. This wasn't just like a segment on a TV show. And then lo
Yeah.
and behold, I reached out to you. Tim gave me your information, and you were so gracious with coming on Somewhere in the Skies. And the rest is history, man. But I have to thank you for what you did for all of us UFO nuts out there.
Oh my gosh, you can't see this right now, but I am blushing. Thank you so much, first off. But like, I will say, it was completely genuine because, like you, I have been I don't remember a time being alive where I haven't been intensely into this. And I don't know why, but
Yeah.
like, I was a weird kid and remained to be a weird adult. And when I was tipping my hat, it was because, like a ufologist, I grew up, the only books, I've always been reading a book about UFOs. There's never a time where I'm not, or I should say high strangeness in general. But I did mean it because their work, they're unsung heroes. It's not an easy gig. There's not a lot of flash, not a lot of fame. Some people rise to levels of notoriety, but most of UFO authors and ufologists are really in the margins and they're doing hard work.
Yeah, man. And most of them die penniless and
Yeah.
alone, and it's a sad, depressing world. And there was always that fear, and sometimes still is, that I'm going to fall into that. But I think we're in a good place right now where UFOs are more mainstream than ever, more accepted now more than ever, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But yeah, man, I spent so many years just under that flag or that banner of ridicule that I just never really talked about it. And I did my research kind of in the shadows, or I go on first dates, say I'm a ufologist, and there was never a second date. Thank God for my amazing partner now who accepts me for who I am. But
Right,
yeah.
right. Oh, that is so funny. Like I kind of have a similar trajectory as well because like it's not like I'm newly into this stuff. I've always been very into it, but like, out in LA, like, I was pretty closeted. I think people knew like, oh, he likes UFOs and stuff, but I don't think they knew how much time I put into like researching and reading about them. But like, I don't know, just like a couple years ago, I'm like, who cares, man? Let the freak flag fly and let's have some fun because like to me, the reason I want to do my show in this show is because I want to talk to people like you. So now I have an entree to do that. And
It's
I'm sure you feel the same way when you started your show.
I do. When I first started the podcast, I'd been kind of going on other shows and being like the UFO guy, where they'd have me come on and do a little segment, update their audience on what's going on in the UFO world, because it was usually like a Bigfoot podcast or a paranormal show or something like that. And I really liked it. I liked that kind of routine of every week doing some research, trying to find a solid argument for what I was going to present, why it's important, why I think that people should look into it, and present that to an audience. And I kind of got hooked on it. It was like my drug, and I decided one day, why don't I give this a try? And
Yeah.
I didn't know if anyone would ever listen to the podcast that I eventually hosted, that I created. I got very lucky, and my first ever guest for the premiere episode was UFO historian Richard Dolan.
Oh,
And
wow. That's a big get for
I know,
your
it's like,
first show. Yeah.
right? It's like getting like Tom Cruise or something when you're starting an acting
Totally.
podcast.
Totally, man. Totally. But
But
your show's been
it
on the,
worked.
you've been doing it for, I mean, 7, 8, 9, 10 years now. I mean, it's been I've been
It's been a
listening
while.
since the beginning. Do you know how
Yeah.
long actually?
I mean, so I want to say actually 2016 is when the podcast started. I've been researching UFOs for God over
Oh yeah.
half my life.
Right.
But yeah, we're up to like 350 episodes, I think it is now.
Wow.
I've never missed a single week, which I'm very proud of.
Yeah.
I got injured, like really injured, and had to miss 1 week. But even in that week, I somehow squeezed an episode out. But I love it, man. I
I know.
love these conversations like the one you and I are going to have. And I wouldn't still be doing it if I didn't still have that passion and curiosity to try to understand these anomalous phenomena that everyone's experiencing, these
Well,
high
well,
strangeness events.
yeah. I mean, it really shows in your work though, because and one thing I love, I have a lot of questions to ask you, but one thing I do love about you and your show, and even how you post on social media, is there is a genuine love. You are never really you're very open-minded in this
Mhm.
stuff. Like, you don't just take a stand and stick there and fight your how you look at the topic. You're super open-minded. You have a lot of people from different perspectives, and even different granular topics within UFOs. So you do such a great job of kind of being this all-encompassing, hey man, I want to hear your story. I may not agree with it, but let's talk about it. And I feel like sometimes, people can get really comfortable in their echo chamber. I'm probably guilty of that myself, but you really do a great job, I think. To me, you're the UFO ambassador I look to.
Oh my
And
gosh.
and truly, with all the congressional hearing stuff, I don't really Google it or go to a news site. I go to you.
Oh wow.
Because your live streams have been so incredible, and it's
I have to
unbiased.
show you this, man.
Please do.
Congressional hearings, these were my notes
Oh
for
my
your
God.
listeners. I've got about 15 pages of notes here from that hearing. I take this stuff very seriously, and I want this topic to be taken seriously by everyone, by the public
Mhm.
at large. And when you have a congressional UFO hearing on UFOs, and you have these mainstream outlets kind of making a joke of it, or finding the most ridiculous photos they can at the hearing to kind of slap on their articles, it does the whole topic a huge disservice. So if I can present what actually happened there, what was important about it, and the fact that you that you came to me for that, that's extremely flattering of you. I'd highly suggest looking at some of the articles that have come out by some of the alternative media on it as well,
Mhm.
that have done really good work on that. But that's cool, man. I appreciate that you come to me for that stuff, and that's what I want to be for people, like that every day. Oh, I'm interested in UFOs, but I don't look. I'm not eating it for breakfast every
Yeah.
morning like I am.
Well, I
So
had
yeah.
actually 2 friends from LA, because they people were texting me, during the congressional hearings, like, dude, you were right. I'm like, well, first off, I'm not right about anything, but I mean, a lot of people who weren't maybe had a minor interest. They've seen a James Fox doc or two, watched some UFO TV, reality shows or whatever. But I actually hip them to your live streams and your podcast because I'm like, if you want to get caught up on this stuff, I would go here, because you have to be careful where you get your UFO news from, I believe.
Yeah.
And so your spin, I shouldn't say, not, didn't mean spin, but your tone and vibe is one of here are the facts. I'm not going to put my belief system on them, but I'm reporting to you what I am discovering. It's very I mean, gosh, it's journalistic, I guess, it is. So, I mean, you're kind of the UFO journalist that I point people to and I follow for UFO news because I'm too lazy to do the work myself.
No,
I
not
let you
at
do
all.
it for me.
Yeah, right. Well, I really appreciate that, man. And I don't like to call myself a journalist. I was never trained. I didn't go to school for that. However, the world has changed, and
Uh-huh.
the definition of a journalist has changed, especially when a lot of these uh, conservative news outlets, and I don't mean in a political conservative
Right.
way, but just very stuffy and set in their ways. When they're not giving this topic, I think, the serious coverage it deserves. That's when you got to put the power back in the people's hands. And I do honestly believe that civilian journalists are the future of this topic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think any of these big outlets are really going to go after it.
Yeah.
You look at how the congressional hearing was covered. It was first covered because of an article that came out in a tech defense website called The Debrief, an alternative news site. And then 2 weeks later, that's when NBC, CBS, Fox, CNN, they started to pick it up. So,
Yep.
yeah, I think that is the future of journalism. And if I can be even one of those people contributing to that in any way, I think it's great. And, even the New York Post came to me. I
Yeah.
wrote my first article in the New York Post recently
And I
about
was
it.
just going to say, I would totally, and I will link this in the show notes, but I would highly recommend people, if they want to kind of get up to date and get a kind of zoomed out view of what has happened in the last month, I highly recommend reading this article. First off, it's very well written and it's pretty exhaustive in what is, getting you up to date with what's happening and potentially what we can maybe expect coming down the pike, so,
Thank
yeah, I recommend going to Ryan Sprague for your UFO news, and I would call you a journalist. I mean, if being a journalist is a paywall behind getting a $200,000 degree, then I mean that's just a piece of paper, folks.
Exactly.
If you are writing about it, you're a journalist. Now, you can comment on the validity of their journalism, but it's a label that I feel very comfortable giving you. So, congratulations, man! You've really just been on a roll, killing it. And I mean, I'm not even sure if you ever have time to sleep. I hope you do.
No, this is about my 10th cup of coffee today, brother. So I run on caffeine.
Yeah, who doesn't these
I'll
days, man?
sleep when I die.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I'm terrible at sleeping. It's so boring. So the reason, I've been wanting to talk to you, but I found this to be such a fitting moment because Ryan is putting on this wonderful, super exciting virtual conference called Anomicon. And I'm going to let you explain a little bit of what it's about. But I will just say, about a month and a half ago, Ryan reached out to me and asked me if I would speak at it. And first off, I was like, are you kidding me? Absolutely. I'm just a guy who does bits for a living. First of all, I'm so humbled to be a part of this and just so damn excited. I've been working really hard trying to come up with, challenging myself, trying to do something interesting. So, first off, thank you so much. And would you be kind enough to kind of tell us how you got the idea, how you got the guts, and just kind of what people can expect from this conference a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, no, first of all, I'm honored to have you, Steve. I mean that, man. But I wouldn't say guts. I would say naivete, stupidity. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm gonna be completely upfront with you. I've never hosted a conference. I've never tried or even attempted to do one of these. I've been a part of a lot of them. But dude, honestly, I woke up one morning and I had this image in my head of one word, and that was anomalous. And it just kept haunting me throughout the day. And I'm like, wow, anomalous, anomalous, anomalous. And then I come to find out that that is now what the US government is calling UFOs. We went from UFO to UAP, which was unidentified aerial phenomena. No, now they're even changing it again to unidentified anomalous phenomena officially,
Oh, really?
which is crazy. And I said, okay, so now UFOs are being considered anomalous, but what about everything else? Are ghosts anomalous? Yeah.
Right.
Are psychics anomalous? I think so. Is
Yeah.
Bigfoot anomalous? Yeah.
You betcha.
Literally anything could be an anomaly, you know?
Right.
And I had to, I actually sat down and went into the dictionary and made sure. I'm like, what
Yeah.
does an anomaly actually mean?
Yeah.
And all of that fits into it, man. So I said to myself, who are the people that I truly respect out there covering all of this stuff? Bigfoot, whatever, Mothman,
Hmm.
paranormal, supernatural, UFOs, high strangeness.
Yeah.
And that's when all of the people who have inspired me throughout the years just started flooding through my head. And I'm not talking like the very well-known established UFO researchers out there on every conference circuit, or the people you see on television or documentaries. These are my friends. These
Yeah.
are my colleagues, the people I have very personal and profound conversations with on a day-to-day basis. So that's when I started reaching out to people like Rob Christofferson, who I know you've had on your show.
Yeah. He's so great, man. Oh,
Ah, encyclopedic knowledge. You know, when you get that guy as a guest, you do not have to prepare anything. He
no,
does everything
no.
for you,
Yeah, he does.
which I love him for.
I
So
do too. He's that guy has taught me a lot.
yes, and he was the first person I reached out to for a Nomicon, actually.
Hell yes.
Um, and then I just again I started throwing Hail Marys left and right. I'm like, hey, do you want to be a part of this virtual conference I'm doing? I can't say it's going to be successful. I can't say I'm going to pay you, and I can't say it's going to be worth your time. But would you want to do it? And over 38 people immediately told me yes. And that's when I said, 38. Holy shit. Like, that's a lot of speakers.
Yeah.
And then I just got this pit in my stomach. I'm like, oh, that's like a 2-day Woodstock event. Like, oh God. I mean, or this is like turning into Firefest. Like, what's gonna happen here?
It's UFO Woodstock. I think that's
Yeah,
what we should call this. I mean,
I
that's so
know, right?
funny, dude. It's so
I'm gonna
funny.
trademark that instead of a Nomicon. But
But it sounds like
yeah.
what which I think is such a wonderful spirit to go into creating something like this, where you kind of create a thing. It's like, well, if I was to sit and watch a UFO conference 2 days, who would I want to see speak?
Mhm.
And you kind of just did that. You're like, well, these are the people that are interesting to me, like and like I think you've done a great job of getting some, people who are definitely known in the field, such as Rob and like Josh Cutchin and. I'm sorry, my brain is somewhere else.
No, no.
There's such a long list, and there are so many people who I know, but there are a handful of people who I don't know, and that is exciting to me because I love to hear new voices and new takes on the
Yeah.
stuff.
I'm so happy you bring that up. So the other big thing I wanted to make in Nomicon was a platform for diverse voices.
Hmm.
Again, you go to any UFO conference and let's say there's 20 speakers. 19 out of those 20 are going to be middle-aged white men, and you're going to hear the same damn thing from every single one of them.
Yep,
That's not to put their work down by
of
any
course.
means. I'm fastly becoming one of those old white men
Yeah,
myself. Um,
I hear you.
but the irony is not lost on me. But I wanted to open this up. I wanted to find people, whether it's of whatever, a different race or a different study, not just UFOs, just different voices.
Right.
And that's why, I reached out to a lot of female identifying individuals
Yep.
who have really, really interesting things to say, but are not getting those opportunities
Right.
as much as, someone like you or I who have kind
Right.
of that privilege of
Yep.
of constant acknowledgement, as it were.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I reached out to diverse individuals out there whom people have never really heard from. This will be the first time a lot of these people are going to be doing any sort of conference, and
Oh,
that
that's
is
great.
extremely exciting for me. And again, covering topics you'd never even think of. There's one guy doing uh, a talk called UFO Magic Show. I have no
Oh,
idea what that means.
AP Strange, right?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, I actually talked to him a little bit about that. I didn't want him to tell me too
Oh,
much because
sweet.
I didn't want to, spoiler alert, but like it sounds unbelievable. And I love that guy. He is
Yeah.
so great.
Yeah, he's amazing. And again, I've got a guy doing Bigfoot. I got a guy doing Mothman of Michigan. And like you mentioned, people like Joshua Cutchin is
Yeah,
talking about a case, a UFO case that I've never heard of before.
me either.
So that's why I'm doing it. I want to
Yeah.
learn just as much as the audience is going to want to learn. So I'm super excited, man. It's going to be a 2-day event. Each day is going to be, again, like super, like 8 hours long. But this is something you don't have to watch all the way through. It
Mm-hmm.
will live in perpetuity on YouTube, on Twitter. I'm actually going to put each talk as its own individual video eventually as well.
Oh, that's
Um,
really cool.
yeah, and also like I don't own the rights to any of this. It's a
Yeah.
free event. These speakers can do what they want with their talks. I don't care if they repost it anywhere. I just want to get those voices out there and start new conversations on all of this stuff. So yeah, that's
Well,
kind of a Namakaran in a nutshell.
I have found working in the entertainment business for 20 years and then, dipping my toe into this world that I find it to be, unfortunately, incredibly rare to when people get success that they bring other people with them. But
Mhm.
you are like the shining example. And I wish more people would have your kind of like spirit because you definitely have gotten some great success in this in this world, man. Like you are one of the people turn to for information. And the fact that you are taking people who haven't had the opportunity to speak in front of, big virtual conference or, don't have the notoriety or social media following, whatever you want to call it, to give them an opportunity to platform. I mean, I'm a big believer in general where rising tides lift all ships.
Yes.
And it seems like you feel the same way. So like bravo to you. Like I think that is such a cool thing. And I hope it inspires other people to kind of do the same in UFOs and in life in general. Like it's just we have to, like the thing is like, not to get political, but like the people who have all the money and power and control in especially America, they don't like to share it very much.
Mhm.
So it's up to people in a community like this to do it for us. And so you are a great example. And I think like you're setting a really good bar for people to, help each other out, man.
Yeah.
It's a community thing. We're all doing different things within it,
Right.
so
It will,
what?
and I'm sorry, Steve. Well,
No,
and none of us know what the hell any of this stuff actually is. We have
no.
to just put that out there. I don't know
Yeah,
what UFOs are. I've been studying them for over freaking 28 years at this point, and I'm
right.
no closer to an answer of what UFOs are or aren't. I change my mind every day.
Yeah.
But I think that's what, again, that's what this is all about. We're all trying to find answers and meaning in
Yep.
all of this, in
Yeah.
life or in the paranormal or in UFOs. And this gives me meaning,
Yeah.
UFOs. I love that pursuit of trying to uncover those answers. Will
Yep.
I ever get there? I don't know, but that journey's been incredible. I've met incredible people along the way, like yourself, and that is so much more rewarding than like getting to the final level of the
Yeah.
ufology video game.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, man, I think you're right. And the other thing too is I have so many people that did that for me and took
Hmm.
a chance on me.
Hmm.
My mentor Peter Robbins, a UFO
Oh, I
researcher.
love Peter Robbins.
Oh my god, man! Like
Legend.
he's like my UFO dad. He's held my hand every step of the way. He told me what to look into, what not to, who
Yeah.
to talk to, who not. And he opened a lot of doors for me. And again, if I can like do that for anyone else in this field, these younger people getting interested, which is really exciting. I used to be like the youngest ufologist out there, not the
Yeah.
case anymore, which is depressing, but also
Yeah.
really, really refreshing. Um, I feel like that's the least I could do in a community of people who are just trying to find answers to life
Yeah.
and what's out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, thank you for saying that.
Yeah, of course. You brought up something interesting about like the pursuit and how it does enrich your life, and I do think, for me personally, that even going beyond UFOs and all the high strangeness stuff I love to obsess about and talk about, mystery is very important to me. It kind of like I'm not a big materialist guy, and I think maybe a lot of things some people are interested in, I'm just not that moved by. But mystery gets me up in the morning. Like I think it's a noble goal to be interested in the mysteries of life, and UFOs and all this stuff is just a component of the big mystery of like, what does it all mean, man? Like not to
Yeah.
get too philosophical, but you know what I'm saying? Like I like you. I don't know what any of this stuff is, what it means, what it exactly represents, but the mystery for me is enough to keep on chasing for the rest of my
Oh my
life, probably.
god, I love that. Yeah, I mean, you look at someone like Red Pill Junkie, our
Yeah.
mutual colleague, and
Yes.
the work he does. And the thing that always sticks out to me about the work he does is his whole idea of UFOs and anarchy.
Hmm.
And that's always stuck with me. And I could talk to him for hours about this, how chaotic UFOs are and how they shake up everything, whether it's politically, economically, psychologically,
Yeah.
it's scientifically.
Right.
It challenges everything we think we know about the world we live in. And I love that. And that's kind of what UFOs have always been for me. Like
Yeah.
I wake up and I make my coffee, I check my email, check the news, same shit, something horrible's happened in the world. We'll overcome it, and then it'll happen again tomorrow. And then
Yeah.
I go to work just like everyone else and work my 9 to 5. But it's that mystery of
Hmm.
what else is out there,
Yeah.
what else could be out there that kind of keeps me going. So that's why I decided like this is what I want to do in my life. I just
Yeah.
want to chase that mystery. And
Right.
I'll never get the answer probably. Maybe I will. Probably won't like that answer either
Yeah.
way, but
Exactly.
I love it, man. And yeah, that's what I love about these topics. They challenge us. And
Yeah.
that's what we need in life.
I think so too. I think mystery and challenge and whatever drives you to like, I mean, like, look, it's great to love your job. It's great to love your family and all
Yeah.
that great stuff. But it is nice to have a personal quest.
Yes.
Something that's just yours that you can share with people if you want or keep to yourself. But like, and one thing you kind of mentioned, UFOs kind of are more than important than just the UFO. They have such an impact in going back. I mean, like, I kind of the opinion that, the UFO phenomenon has been with us in some manifestation for thousands of years. If you read
Mhm.
like Valet's Wonder in the Skies, that's kind of a testament to this idea. But whether or not like how you view UFOs, and this is kind of again to talk about Valet, but his idea of the UFO as a control system,
Yes.
where it's controlling our sociocultural evolution, if you want to call it that. They have ramifications that are just not about advanced technology flying around the sky. They actually are part of our mythology and our Jungian archetypes. And so, I mean, it's like whether you're into UFOs or not, they are infused in all our lives, whether you like
Yes.
it or not. It's part of it.
Whether you like UFOs or not, they like you and they're interested in
Exactly.
you.
That is that I feel certain about. That I feel certain about. Um,
Yeah.
so okay, going back to Anomicon. Now, let's say you are just, a guy named Joey, you live in Iowa and you're like, oh, I'm going to tune in Anomicon. What are your recommendations for enjoying this? Now, I'm talking about pairing it with food, maybe like, beverage. It's Friday, it comes, you're sitting down your couch, you have it blasted onto your big 72-inch TV. Is it
Yeah.
a popcorn situation or were you talking like, because I'm going to meal prep, so I'm actually looking for suggestions from
Oh
you.
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any dietary restrictions?
That I like to eat a lot of food, so.
Oh, good. That's
My restriction is not. Well, I have none actually.
that's what I like to hear. That's what I
Yeah,
like to hear.
yeah.
So I'm kind of looking at Anomicon as like a Super Bowl sort of
Hmm.
situation. I'm gonna have some fun like commercials in between the talks and stuff
Oh,
like that, and that's why people tune into the Super Bowl. Let's be completely honest, is for
yeah.
the commercials. That's not to take away from the amazing presentations we're gonna have. But I'm looking at this as like a fun event that you could get together with like your fellow weirdos and just watch. We'll have a live chat going the whole time.
Oh,
That
fun.
yeah, man. So I mean, that's going to be happening. So it is going to be a very communal experience. So I'm all for pizza and wings.
Yes.
I'm going old
Yes.
school, like
Yeah.
at least on the East Coast, that's what we did every Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Pizza,
Yeah.
wings, nachos, beer. So yeah, I think this will be a good time to just get together with your friends and check it out. Or if you're by yourself, same thing. Just make the portions a little smaller, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, no, I agree. I mean, like, it's funny because I'm such a food-based person. I like to pair food with every aspect of my life. And when you first asked me to do a lecture, I was like, oh my God, yes. 5 minutes later, I'm like, well, when I watch the lecture, though, what am I going to eat? Like maybe day one, it's Thai food, but then I'm like, should I have a lot of little different small things so I can
Ooh,
kind
I
of
like that.
graze slowly all day? And I don't want to, drink too many cocktails so I'm incoherent, but I'm going to get some nice sipping beers, maybe some local craft beer, like a hazy IPA to enjoy
Ah,
with it.
I love that. I love that. I'm a dark beer guy, so
Ooh,
I'll probably be drinking stouts throughout, or I got the brown stuff too. I'm a big Scotch
yeah.
fan. I
Oh,
do
I
live in
love scotch.
Scotland,
Oh,
so
boy. You're
so
getting the mother's milk right there.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I can't guarantee that I'm going to be exactly sober for the entire event either, but I don't think anyone is. Let's be completely.
No,
That's why
look,
I asked for pre-recorded
yeah,
presentations.
yeah, that's good. That's good. I don't need to do a drunk history lecture. I would be,
Part 2. Yeah.
yeah, I'd be incoherent, man. Um, so I have a, I'm sure you are terribly tired of recounting this, but could I possibly? Because I know your experience, and you have had a UFO experience.
Yeah.
Would you mind for my listeners recounting that? Is that okay? I know you're
Of
probably
course.
so
No.
tired of it.
Never, man. No, I never get tired of it. It sent me on the path I'm on today, so I'll
Okay.
forever be either grateful or cursed for
Yeah.
for the rest of my life because
I'm
of that.
jealous. I'm jealous.
You might not be after you hear it, but
Okay, okay. Ooh.
well, okay. So this was 1995. I was on a summer getaway with my family. We would go to this camp up in it's called Alexandria Bay in
Hmm.
central New York, just
Okay.
outside of Syracuse, New York, where
Okay.
I
Yeah,
was.
that's a beautiful part of New
Yeah,
York too. So
mhm,
pretty.
not too far from Rob Christopherson, actually. To
Yeah,
be
he's
completely
Adirondacks
honest.
area, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
So this was 95, so we're talking like Green Day's Dookie had just come out. So I was fishing on the dock one day at the Fisherman's Wharf. It was this motel we'd stay at um every summer. And I was listening to Green Day on my Discman at the time. Remember
Oh
those
yeah,
things?
dude. I remember saving up my lawn mowing money to get one of those, and I thought my life was changed after that. It was amazing.
It's amazing. I know, I know. And distinctly remember the song that was on when all of this happened. It was Basket Case on the Dookie album. That's how like ingrained these memories were
Wow.
for me. So I'm reeling my line in. It had just turned dark, so I was done fishing for the day. Um and as I'm reeling my line in, I saw these lights in the water off the St. Lawrence River, it's called. And what the hell is that? Like, is there something in the water? So I kind of like scamper to the edge of the dock and I look down and I realize, oh, Ryan, come on, man. It's a reflection. It's a
Yeah.
reflection. Turn over, turn over. So I flip over on my back and I look up and it's just there. This triangle. Um,
Whoa.
completely silent, made no noise whatsoever. I could literally just hear the dock, like the water hitting the dock at the time. I'd ripped my headphones off at this point, so like Green Day was done, and I just that's one of the most vivid memories was the water hitting the dock while I'm
Uh
looking
huh.
at this thing floating above me. Um,
Right.
it was a perfect equilateral triangle formation. Uh, there was a white light in each point of the triangle and a red light in the middle. Kind of this,
Classic.
yes, classic prototypical black triangle. I do make it clear I never saw like a machine, so I didn't know if this is an actual structured craft of any kind. It was just a perfect equilateral triangle. But what I do remember is I couldn't see anything behind it. Like stars were
Interesting.
out at this point, the moon was out. I could not see any of that beyond the triangular formation. So I
It, it,
assume it was structured.
it was hovering, or was it moving slowly?
It was hovering above me at first.
Oh my.
And I can't really tell you how long I was staring up at it. The time of all of this, how long it was or short it was, is very hazy in my
Mm-hmm.
memory. But I do remember several times squealing. I was like 12 at the time, just going through puberty and like trying to squeal for my dad, who was in our motel room. I could literally see his legs like on the edge of the bed in the motel. He's watching a Yankees baseball game on TV, and I'm just like, Dad, Dad, and I could barely get it out, man. I was so scared. I was frozen there looking at this thing. I didn't know what was about to happen or if anything was going to happen.
Right.
And finally he heard me and he comes like bolting out. He thought I like fell in the water or something. So he runs up to me and he sees me looking up. So he naturally looks up too. And we both saw it. So I had my dad there
Wow.
staring up at this black triangle or triangular formation with me. And we both just kind of stood there, kind of awestruck, looking at this UFO. And then slowly it started to move and it started to coast over the water. And again, time is hazy. I don't know how long it took, but we watched the triangle go over the river and onto the other side of the river, which was actually Canada. The river
Right.
bordered New York State and Canada, disappeared on the other side of the river. And that's kind of it, man. That moment changed my life
Wow.
forever.
Yeah. I mean, it certainly did, obviously. Yeah. Look at you doing now. I mean, but like
Yeah.
that is a very, very dramatic encounter. I mean,
Yeah.
like, I've been lucky enough to talk to a lot of people who've had this experience, but this really ranks up there with, I mean, like that, the fact that it was hovering above you, waited for your dad to come out. I mean, I'm not trying to get too woo-woo with this, but like it is almost like it was a display
Yeah.
for you and your father to see this together. Like, I'm not trying to like put my own
Yes.
spin on it, but like, I mean, like you can think what you want, but like that is so seeing the reflection. I mean, that too, even just from a science point of view, like that is a interesting kind of bit of evidence to where like you see the reflection on the water, so it was not an illusion. Like
Right.
that you were like like, oh, people say like, oh, there was a imprinted waking dream. I'm like, well, like I feel like you can rule a lot of that stuff out with how your encounter went down, and that is really something else. Now, just because I had to ask, was there any kind of like Jenny Randall's-esque Oz effect to where like you felt like the environment, like I know you said the sound of water
Mhm.
splashing on the dock was kind of a powerful detail
Yeah.
that you still remember to this day, can still hear the splash of the water, but was there any kind of other weird like effect in retrospect that you can kind of remember?
Yeah, I'm glad you said retrospect
Hmm.
because, memory is very faulty. I was 12 years old when this happened. So,
Right.
like, I always try to impart that to people. Like,
Hmm.
uh, memories can build upon themselves as years go on. So, I try not to make too many very distinct observations about what happened. However, it wasn't really what I saw or heard. It was what I felt. And
Right.
I did feel some sort of like I don't even know how to describe it. Like a vibration, I guess would
Yeah.
be the best word I could use.
Hmm.
Um throughout my body. And that easily could have been adrenaline. It could have been because I was scared. Um I felt frozen, like
Right.
literally physically frozen to the dock.
Hmm.
Um and everything felt like it was going in slow motion, kind of like
Yeah.
that Oz factor, like you said.
Yes.
But again, like, was that a control system of the craft above me? Does it have some sort of way of producing these
Right.
physiological effects? Or was this simply my reactions to it, like any natural person would be when they're staring at something they can't explain by any conventional term? I don't know, but yeah,
Right.
I do recall, to the best of my memory, feelings of slow motion, echoing almost, like I said,
Mm-hmm.
yelling to my dad. I
Yeah.
felt like I was outside of my body a little bit doing all of that.
Right.
I
Right.
don't know.
I
I don't
always like to
know.
think about the experiencer situation is almost like you're stepping into a weird bubble of non-reality.
Yes.
I know it sounds so weird, and these are just, I mean, I am far from a scientist, but like, it does seem like when people have these encounters that are as dramatic as yours, that the world sort of the world around them kind of melts away, and
Mhm.
you're in this like little reality tunnel for a short period of time. Like where it's only you in this craft, like, nothing else exists. You're probably not, and I know that's not any kind of scientific argument. And I guess I'm speaking from more an emotional perspective,
Yeah.
but what you were describing is wildly common in UFO encounters where there's just like kind of this weirdness X factor that comes along with it as a symptom or result of having these occurrences.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you got to wonder too, like, was that, like you said, for my father and I? Was this a display
Yeah.
just for us, or had other people seen it? I mean, the next morning we went to the owner of the motel and we asked, we're like, did anyone like report anything weird around
Right.
here? And he's like, what, weird? What do you mean? Like,
Never
and
mind. Never mind.
yeah. And my dad was too embarrassed to tell him, which is
Right.
fine. Like, I
Yeah.
totally understand that. But, being kind of a kid with no real inhibition at the time, I just was like, a UFO. Has anyone ever reported, like, did they report any UFOs last night? And he was like, no, but we have had people say they've seen things around
Right.
here. So that could very well, it could be an area of where
Yeah.
these things are coming in and out of.
Right.
Or it could have just been for my father and I. I don't know, but that's when you get into that big, profound question of,
Yeah.
like, why me? Why did this happen to me in
Hmm.
that moment? And what
Well,
does that do to you after?
yeah, sometimes, and like, I have my own weird perspective on all this stuff. But like, sometimes I do feel like that is a form of an initiation. Like,
Mm.
not like I don't know if initiation is the right word, but 5 minutes prior to your encounter, you were one way. You were little Ryan Sprague listening to, Basket Case on your Discman. 5 minutes later, you're kind of changed forever. So, like, there is almost like with experiencing something so anomalous, so outside the realm of consensus reality, I think whether you mean it to or not, it does initiate you into a new, like, philosophy or worldview. Like,
Hmm.
it definitely, like, obviously had a profound effect on you. You are now, all these years later, you know, a UFO, making, your life is UFOs,
Yeah.
for better or worse, it is, But one question I do have, how did this affect your father?
Good question. So even in the moment, I remember looking up at him, uh, and the thing had disappeared at this point, and we both kind of just stood there for a minute, awkwardly silent, and he kind of just shrugged his shoulders, turned around, and went back in because there was a Yankees game on, and there's
Yeah.
nothing more important for a father in the mid '90s in Syracuse, New York, than to watch a New York Yankees game. Even a UFO isn't going to change that. Might have even been the seventh inning stretch. I don't know. Maybe
Right.
maybe that's what it was. But
Right.
he went back inside and he went on with his life. I did not. Uh,
Yeah.
I had a horrible nightmare that night about the triangle. Um,
Interesting.
to the fact where, like, my dad said I was like whimpering in my sleep, which was terrifying because I'd never really done that before. And
Wow.
then I had nightmares for years after that. It was kind of traumatizing, man. Like, I've put it behind me now, because I've embraced the topic and the
Uh-huh.
mystery, and obviously I've heard hundreds and hundreds of stories at this point, that are similar to mine, so that gives me comfort too.
Right.
Um, but it really did affect me. And I tried to talk about it with my friends, and they laughed at me. They made fun of me.
Mm-hmm.
My mom, God bless her, I love her to death. She's my biggest supporter now with all of the work that I do. But back then, when I did try to talk about it, she's like, nah, stop.
Yeah.
Like, people
Yeah.
are going to think you're crazy. Don't
Right.
bring this up at your cousin's birthday party again. Please don't do that. Please,
Yeah,
please,
she's
please.
just trying to protect you, probably.
Absolutely,
Like
man.
I
And I
get, I
love her for
get
that.
that.
But,
Yeah, absolutely.
so I kind of, I did all my research, like you said, kind of in the shadows, in the closet. I didn't
Yeah.
tell anyone I was interested after that. I
Mm-hmm.
started taking out the books at the library like everyone does.
Yep.
Still haven't returned some of them. So I'm going to have Mr. Bookman coming after me at some point.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah.
that's really, I mean, in like, the nightmares, did it affect your sleep? Like, did you have irregular sleep perchance, like afterwards?
Um I wouldn't say so, to be
No.
completely
Yeah.
honest. Like,
Yeah.
no sort of like insomnia or
Yeah.
weird sleep patterns, but the dreams did wake me up,
Yeah.
and they were violent wakings up. I can tell you that
Right.
much. What really helped me actually, and I like to tell people this, is when I was 13, a year after the sighting, uh, my dad kind of threw me a bone.
Right.
He was a bowler. He was like so close to becoming like a professional bowler. I mean, the dude's got like so many 300 rings and stuff like that.
Whoa.
He's
Yeah.
like, the movie Kingpin should have been made about him. I'm not lying. um, but he met someone at one of his bowling leagues who said, "Hey, my dad was in Vietnam. I don't know how they got talking about it, but the topic of UFOs came up, and he was like, my dad had a UFO sighting in Vietnam." And my dad was like, okay. I've got this weird little son back home who's reading about like a Roswell thing or a Area 51. He might be interested in hearing about that. So he got me in touch with this guy's dad,
Wow.
and I called him up. I'm 13, mind you. I call up this Vietnam veteran. I have no idea what I'm going to ask him or like how to conduct an interview or anything like that. But I talked to this Vietnam veteran for 2.5 hours on the phone, all about what it was like being in war, his entire life and career. And then, like, 5 minutes of that conversation was about this dramatic Foo Fighter UFO sighting he had over the Pacific Ocean during
Wow.
Vietnam. And I was just so like not taken back, but I was so honored that like he told me that. And then he died like
Oh.
a couple months after that. And his son, who was the one to, kind of put us in touch, he told me, you're the first person he's ever told about that besides like me and his wife.
Wow.
And the weight of that, man, at age 13, I was just like, wow, that's what I want to do. I
Yeah.
want to interview people who've seen what I've seen, who've experienced what I've experienced, and just hear their stories. And that's kind of where it all started for me. A year after my sighting, 13, I wrote down my first interview with a UFO witness, and I handed it in to my English teacher in middle school. And
Amazing.
the rest is history.
Well, it is interesting because I remember when I first started listening to your show, I think, and I don't think it was like a tagline, but somewhere in the description, you had written that your goal is to focus on the human experience within
Yes.
the UFO topic. And to me, I was like, ding, 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 because there is only so much we can actually learn from the UFOs or learn about
Mhm.
what the government has. At the end of the day, what I'm interested in mostly is like the civilian experience, how it changed them, what they saw, how it affected their life, how it affected their worldview. And that is why I think I gravitated to your show so fast right away, because at the end of the day, that seems like what you do care about
Absolutely.
the most.
And yes, yeah, it's the individuals having the experiences. So, that kind of traces back to my other passion in life, and that's theater.
Mm-hmm.
You and I may have talked about this at
Well,
some point.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I was a baseball player. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's what my dad wanted me to be. Like I mentioned, like biggest Yankees fan out there. I played baseball my whole life, and up until college actually. And then I caught the theater bug. I got
Right.
involved in the theater department at the college I was going to, and I was doing like stagecraft. I was building sets. I was
Oh,
painting.
it's so fun.
Oh God,
I've done
dude,
that. I miss doing that stuff, man.
me too. It's the funnest time I ever had in theater. And they were like, you also have to try out for the plays because you have to get a mutual respect for what actors do, what director, you know how
Sure.
that goes. Like you got to
You have to understand all of it.
absolutely, and I respected that, and I said okay. So I auditioned for a show, and I did get cast, and then I
Yeah.
caught the acting bug, and that took over for a few years, and I spent the next 3 years acting. I was on 3 national tours,
Wow.
and it was the greatest time of my life. Just traveling the country, doing theater for underprivileged kids mostly,
Oh,
and
wow.
bringing it to people who don't necessarily get to see theater often. So
Yeah.
we were like the Broadway to them. Little did they
Wow.
know, like we were in a circus van putting up our own cardboard sets and
Yeah.
making pennies every day.
Eating Snickers bars for
yeah,
dinner. Buddy, I've been there. That was most of my career.
yeah, me too, brother. Me too. But it was the most rewarding experience of my life in that facet of my life. But the reason I bring that up is because I was still doing the UFO thing. Like while I was on the road traveling for 8 hours from like whatever, um, Washington State to San Francisco, I'm reading UFO books and
Yeah.
I'm continuing to try to unravel these mysteries. And it was a couple years after that I moved to New York City. I was still doing theater. I was still doing UFO thing, researching it kind of by myself in the shadows. And that's when I reached out to Richard Dolan,
Wow.
who was kind of my hero at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm a big fan of your work. I've been studying UFOs for a really long time. I've done some writing in the past. I was wondering, I see you have a publishing company. Could I write a book for you? It was the biggest. Dude, I'm shameless. I'm not afraid to like.
That's how
What's
you
the
have to be,
worst?
though.
Yeah, what's the worst that can happen? They're gonna say no. They're not gonna spit in your face or laugh at you. Maybe they will, but that's very rare.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, like what do you want to write about? And I was like, UFOs. He's like, okay,
Well, what about them?
yeah, like what about them? And I was like, UFOs, I don't know. And he was like, okay. He's like, I could tell you're passionate about this, you're curious, but what do you have to say about UFOs? Like what do you think you can contribute to that conversation? Why would people want to read a book by you about UFOs? And that really humbled me, and that
Mhm.
made me really think, oh yeah, like what can I actually say that hasn't been said before? Meanwhile, I'm auditioning for, you know, Broadway shows, off Broadway, off
Right.
Broadway,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm also writing like these little articles about UFOs here and there for some like magazines. And I thought, okay, I went to school for playwriting and for acting. And what's the biggest thing with either of those? Characters. Like
Yep.
everything begins and ends with the writer, and the characters. And I thought to myself, okay, characters. Like that's something I could focus on. I do create characters in plays. I have to understand their motivations, their objectives, their how they overcome that, and how they change ultimately by the end of a play. And otherwise, why the hell are we watching a play? Why are we being dropped into this part of someone's life if they're just sitting around eating spaghetti
Yeah.
and watching the Kardashians? You know, no, you have to focus on a pivotal moment in someone's life that ultimately changes them in some
Right.
way.
Today is the day. Yeah.
Exactly. Man.
Yep.
And I said, boom, there's my ufology. I want to focus on not characters, but the people having these UFO experiences. Not how big the craft was or like what beings were in the
Right.
craft or anything like
Right.
that. But what did it do to you?
Mhm.
And that's what I wished I had done when I was 13 with this Vietnam veteran.
Right.
But that's what I would eventually do with the hundreds of individuals I have come to interview at this point, is focus on them, put a microscope on them. And that was my first book with Richard Dolan, was a human approach to the UFO phenomenon. The
That
people.
is the quote I was looking for. When I heard that, the human approach to the UFO phenomenon, I was like, man, here's a kindred spirit.
Thanks, man.
Well, because Ryan, that is what we can do. It's like I think sometimes with a topic as big as and grand as for lack of a better term, like there's a lot of gravity behind UFOs. Not to use a pun, but like what we can do is talk to the experiencers and glean different patterns, how it affected them. Like aside from that, it's like I don't understand propulsion and stuff like that. It's not that interesting to me. And like I feel like it's important, but that's for somebody else to look into and decipher. I'm not good at math, so that's not for me.
That's why we're actors in the arts, right?
Well, exactly. And that actually kind of brings me to a point where I've done, I think this will be my 14th show. And without actually knowing I was doing this or like, doing this on purpose, a couple of days ago, I think last week, I was looking at the guests I'd had on. Every single person, except for one, had a background in art or was an artist of some kind.
Oh, wow.
Yourself included. And I want, to me, I was like, well, that is that there seems to be a correlation or a pattern here. And have you found that like people who are into this stuff, not just experiencers, but people who kind of like make it part of their, life quest to, delve deeper into this stuff, that the arts are inextricably linked, I think, somehow.
Yeah.
And I feel like the UFO phenomenon obviously has affected art. I mean, look at Hollywood or, even like music, I mean, like, I think this stuff, high strangeness in general, has had a very big impact. You can even look at the paintings of the Renaissance. I mean, a lot of them are about like these, fantastical religious experiences where some people may call that the same thing as a UFO experience.
Right.
Or, it was a manifestation of the UFO back then. But like the arts and high strangeness seem to be linked. Have you kind of noticed that? Or what do you think that's about?
So like there's a lot to unpack there. But I've gotten to that point as you have, where I've looked back at like my 300 and I think it's like 330 or around there episodes of the podcast at this point. And I kind of took a survey of the types of guests I've had. And yeah, I've had, astrophysicists, I've had law enforcement, I've had military people. But the predominant pattern that I found is most of the people I've interviewed, and these are people who've seen UFOs or experienced them or have dedicated their lives to, like you and I have, looking into these things. And a huge swath of them are somehow into the art or have an extreme appreciation of the art. Yeah. And it's so funny. I was in London recently and I interviewed Michael Ian Black from
he's great.
Oh my god, man,
it was such a good episode too.
Thank you. That was a total fluke. I'm not shameless. If I see someone is talking about UFOs and there's someone I respect and have grown up watching on TV, I'm gonna reach out to him. And I did, and he was living in London at the time, kind of like on a sabbatical from the US. And I was like, hey, I live in Scotland. Like, if you ever want to chat UFOs, like, I would love to have you on the show. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. You want to do a face-to-face, like in person? And I was like, yes. So immediately I booked a train to London. I got like a recording space and we had an amazing conversation. And it was while I'm talking to him that I kind of had that realization again. I'm like, I'm sitting here with a guy predominantly known as an actor, as a comedian, but here we are having this in-depth, really interesting conversation about UFOs. Not just like ATIP, Elizondo, the government, but like these bigger questions about UFOs. And it started going through my head. Steve Burke, Reese Darby, Kumail Nanjiani.
Yeah.
Ryan name dropping every comedian that's been on the show. Insert here. And then Michael Ian Black. And I'm just like, there's something to this. So in the moment, I asked Michael Ian Black, I'm like, what is it about comedians and UFOs or musicians and UFOs? I look back in my archives and that's like the most people I've interviewed.
Yeah.
And he said, well, we deal with the ridiculousness for a living. And
I love that.
we are ridiculous people, and we're
Mhm.
not afraid to show it. It's literally our job to
Yeah.
go to the edge and see where that edge is,
Yeah.
and just look over it, come back, look over it, come back.
Yeah.
Sometimes go over.
Yeah.
And I loved that. And I kind of started thinking, like, yes, I think there is something to that. Artists are very courageous people. They are not usually not afraid to show that
Mhm.
that's what art is. It's a way to express yourself.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people who either have experiences or maybe are in the arts and have had an experience, it is another way to express themselves.
Mhm.
And the other big thing is interpretation. Like, that's one of LA's big things too, is the way human beings interpret these experiences.
Yes.
And I think, again, that is what art is. It's an interpretation of a feeling, of an emotion, of something you need to get
Yeah.
out to the world in your way. And then
Yeah.
it's up to the public to then interpret that in their own way. And it's
Right.
just this cyclical, beautiful thing that just keeps going throughout time. And that's UFOs, man.
Yeah.
Like, I
Oh.
don't care what that thing is in the sky. I care about what you took from that, how it changed you, and what you're going to do with the time you're given in this world with that. Um, so yeah, I think that's kind of why I've interviewed so many artists like you have.
Yeah.
They not only that, they make for really entertaining guests.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, like, like I guess in my life, I've always gravitated towards like minds. Who doesn't, And
Yeah.
so I've mostly hung out with artists my entire life. But like, even going back to Valet, while he may not be a concert pianist, he writes with an artist's mind
Oh yeah.
because he asks these questions that are art questions. And like, like Greg Bishop, who we both know, he years ago said like maybe UFOs are a cosmic art project,
I
and
love
I
that.
always think about that. I'm like maybe they are,
Yep.
because like whether we like it or not, like we were saying, like UFOs and high strangeness has had even like I'll even throw in religious experience
Mhm.
for thousands of years. It has really impacted art in such a massive way, and I think will always continue to.
Yeah.
And it's not always the representation that you jive with. Like in the Hollywood, Independence Day. I'm a little tired of the aliens attack Earth narrative. I think we've
Right.
explored that enough at this point. But yeah,
But you know what's fascinating about that too, Steve, is like even Independence Day, something so surface level, ridiculous, Hollywood blockbuster. There's things to be gleaned from that
oh yeah,
too. Like Independence Day reminds me a lot of War of the Worlds,
yes,
which was literally written as a commentary on colonialism at the
yeah,
time.
yep,
So I even fast forward to like something like Independence Day and be like, yeah, we're always afraid of an other
yeah,
and something being more advanced than us. And what will that do if we
yeah,
ever do make contact with it,
right,
good or bad, or both? And how many of those good or bads are actually visiting us and making contact? So
right,
yeah, that's kind of how I look at that too. This whole symbiotic relationship between Hollywood and UFOs throughout
yeah,
history is
yep.
really fascinating too.
Yeah, I mean, like it's interesting because, like, especially with Independence Day, for example, it was in the '90s, I think early '90s, and that really was mimicking what people were feeling. Because in the '90s, the UFO, especially the abduction scenario, was
Oh
red
yeah,
hot,
huge.
and so UFOs were, kind of had become this homogenized thing of space doctors, gray aliens coming
Hmm.
to take DNA samples, and it kind of moved away from the 60s and 70s where it was a variety. I mean,
Yeah,
hundreds of different kinds of entities people were seeing. And then into the 80s and 90s, it really got shrunk down to like a couple different aliens, for lack of a better term, that people were seeing. So I think Independence Day actually did a good job of mimicking where people were in the phenomenon, how it was being interpreted at that time.
exactly, man. Yeah, you went from like space loving
Yeah.
aliens,
The
like
environmental
literally,
space brother
yeah,
type thing. Yeah.
to like the darkest you can get, like
Right.
evasive, traumatic, really violent abductions. And
Yeah.
you do get, like you said, it kind of mirrors what's going on at the time in the real world
Right.
too. And I find that fascinating too. And the one last thing I'll say about Independence Day, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but because they were talking about Area 51 in that movie,
Right.
Groom Lake, the Nevada testing site, Area 51, whatever you want to call it, they were an integral part of that movie. They actually
Really?
helped fund Independence Day
What?
because they wanted to control the narrative and how how Area 51 was perceived in that movie. There was a checklist, man. Yes, you
Yeah.
can talk about that. No, not that. Yes, that. No, that. They had a major influence on how Area 51 was to be perceived in that movie. And I found that absolutely fascinating when I found that out. I'm like,
Wha-
really? The government
That
had a hand in Independence Day. Interesting.
I mean, that's not surprising. The government's had, a hand in a lot of Hollywood movies, going back to the Golden Age, like
Yeah,
especially with
yeah.
war movies, they were integral in how war movies were being put out there.
Hmm.
But that is interesting that the government would almost want to, if not only, not only perpetuate, but keep that mythology how they wanted it to be. And that is Area 51 is the holy grail. All the
Ah,
answers are here. If you can only get through those gates, but you can't.
nope.
But that actually, I did not know that. To me, that is wildly
X
fascinating.
Files too, man. Chris
Oh God,
Carter. He had
and
he had
totally,
NSA, CIA, FBI agents on set, covering these cases, trying to like work through them with him,
yeah,
consultants as it were. And there were times where they like said to Chris Carter, "Who did you talk to? Like,
yeah,
how did you know about that?" And
yeah.
he's like, "I can't tell you that." And they're like,
Well,
"Interesting."
I do kind of feel though, like if you think about it, like the way right now, the way UFOs are in the media and in the mainstream, it is kind of an X Files narrative.
Hmm.
I mean, it is playing out where it is like the answers are within Lockheed Martin, and the answers, like it really is this kind of like it's become, like instead of a science fiction movie, it's become a political thriller.
Yeah.
Like, and that is interesting too. I always find it so interesting because I think I was talking with somebody recently about how if you looked at the UFO phenomenon as kind of like evolving movie genres, I
Mhm.
kind of see it as it started out like in antiquity, like as a religious spiritual genre. Then kind of where like the fairy faith and kind of that stuff, it became fantasy.
Mhm.
Then like in the Industrial Revolution, it kind of became science fiction when we were, wanting to go to space, wanting to go to the moon. So it's almost like, I mean, this sounds very woo-woo and weird, but like the phenomenon is mimicking where we are culturally. And that
Yes.
it's always changing. I mean, like, when's the last time you heard of a classic flying saucer case?
Oh God, no.
Or an alien abduction scenario. I feel like these scenarios, it just kind of move. It's one way for a while, and then it changes.
Yeah.
Then we get triangles, and now you don't see triangles so much. You see orbs of light or tic tacs. I'm like, what's next? I wonder, do you think we're kind of on the cusp of seeing this phenomenon change again? With AI and like the tumultuous times of the world with climate change, and like we're going through a kind of like, a rough Earth is going through a rough kind of rough time right now,
Yeah.
I guess. To put it,
Going through some
I'm,
shit.
I'm trying to put, yeah, that's exactly. I was trying to put it more gently, but you cut right to it. We're going through some shit, right? So I mean, I wonder with all this happening, if the UFO phenomenon is going to change as well.
I think
It'll be-
so. Yeah, I do. And I think it's either going to go one of two ways, in my personal opinion. I think either the phenomena is going to start either getting more blatant and scream to us, or
uh-huh.
it's going to become more ambiguous.
Right.
I don't know which way it's going to go.
Yeah.
Um, my hope is that it'll start screaming to us because I
Mm-hmm.
think throughout the decades it's been whispering, and that whisper's gotten a little louder, little louder, little louder. Sometimes it ebbs and flows. But I mean, dude, everyone knows it. Everyone feels it right now. Like
Yeah.
the world is not in a good place.
No.
And I know every generation says that. But let's be
There's
completely honest.
quantifiable ways where we're in a
Yeah.
unique. I mean, like
When the
yes.
own world is starting to fight back against you,
Yeah.
like the literal earth, that's a problem.
Yeah.
So I feel like now is the time for something to happen.
Mhm.
And maybe it has something to do with everything going on in the political realm of UFOs
Right.
right now and in government. I had this conversation the other day after the hearing of why is this all happening right now? Why are we now hearing these stories we thought were mythology? Why is
Right.
what Bob Lazar said maybe true? And I
Right.
use the term maybe with
Of
capital
course. Of
letters.
course. We'll never know. Yeah.
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 Or like you said, the X-Files. Why is this all happening right now? Why are there congressional hearings? Why is there legislation going through to like recover crashed UFOs and this, that? And nobody knows the real answer, at least on the outside of the intelligence apparatus and the government. But everyone I've spoken to feels like something's about to happen.
Yeah.
Not necessarily like UFO disclosure, but
Right.
something profound or paradigm shifting is about to happen in the world.
Hmm.
And this topic of UFOs is either going to be an answer for that or a distraction for that.
Yeah. that is a good point as well, because like, and I am just I'm so agnostic to what's happening. I just truly don't know what's going to happen or how I feel about it. I need more time to process and even just to see what happens. But that is a great point, because like, there are a lot of people out there who are like, guys, this is the same stories we've been hearing, and this is a distraction potentially for climate change or some civil unrest that they know may be coming down the line, like, so it is interesting to see how UFOs and what's happening now correlates with what's happening in the world,
Yeah.
because I do think it's something we all need to pay attention to, whether we like it or not. I mean, like, I'd rather just focus on the cool parts of UFOs, but you do have to look at the like you said, why is this being talked about now? Is it really just because of the 2017 article? Like, and why did that come out even?
Mhm.
So
Right. And I've been asking myself that question since that article came out. And like I'm pretty close with one of the authors of that, Leslie Kane.
mhm.
I've drank beers in her apartment with her in New York and like talked for hours. I've been to like experiencer sessions in her apartment with like Whitley Strieber and stuff.
Oh,
Like,
that's cool.
dude,
Yeah.
crazy, crazy stuff. But that being said, like I still I would never just flat out ask her like, "Did someone make you write that?" Like, what?
Of course. Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
no, like she uncovered something that every UFO researcher or journalist dreams of,
Right.
and she did the work. She went after it. She vetted it. Granted, like yeah, maybe today some of what was originally published in that article isn't exactly 100% accurate.
Right.
Um, However, it's out there,
Yeah.
and we now know about this Pentagon UFO program,
Right.
and the world changed after that. Like
Yeah.
UFOs did seemingly go mainstream, at least for a little while, and again,
Mhm.
that ebbs and flows. But the reason I say that is because I think I'm of two minds. Like on Somewhere in the Skies, I cover all of the government UFO stuff because it's now. And I
Yeah.
want to keep people up to date on all of that
Right.
because
I'm
it's
grateful
very
for it. Yeah.
important. But on the other hand, I'll have Red Pill Junkie on to talk about the anarchy of UFOs,
Yep.
I'll have Joshua Cutchin on to talk about like uh, the weirdest shit you can possibly think
Yes.
of. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and that's what I love. Or Rob, like Rob will
Yeah.
come on and talk about weird ass contactee stories or how the Greys messed up and like abducted someone and put them back in the wrong car with like their clothes on backwards.
Uh.
And that's what I like. I
Yeah.
like that we can like have different conversations because that's what UFOs represent.
Yeah.
Everything. You
Yep.
can connect them to every single thing in the world.
Yeah.
Religion, politics, science,
Yeah.
art. And that's what I love about it. Like those
Right.
three letters mean so much, even though the US government wanted them to just mean unidentified flying objects. Fail. Epic fail
Right.
on their part.
Right. Well, exactly. I mean, not to compare. This is not what I'm trying to say, but like, I'm just trying to make a point of like the impact of things. Is like superstition, whether you believe it or not. If you go into nearly any building in the entire country, there's no 13th floor.
Right.
So I mean, it's not like architects are that superstitious where they think, oh, if we build a 13th floor, then the building will some bad. But it's like it is UFOs and all this kind of stuff is really linked with society, life, and even how buildings are constructed. So
Right.
like kind of like we were saying earlier, like whether you like it or not, UFOs are a part of your life. You may not realize it, but it's in
Yeah.
the art you consume, and the list goes on and on. Oh, I love it so much. So before we, close here, because I don't want to take up too much of your time, I do want to ask you a question. I love to ask people this. You're originally from upstate New York or New York State?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Is there a urban legend or kind of a high strangeness case that you like always kind of like, have a fondness for because, where you came from?
Hmm. Oh wow. Good question.
I'm really putting you on the spot here.
No,
Sorry.
no, 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 not at all, man. I love these kind of questions. I'm trying to dig back into my memory banks. I'm gonna be honest, Syracuse, New York is kind of boring, but not
Right.
too far, not too far north
Right.
actually. You've got that whole Lake Placid area, the Adirondacks, like we mentioned earlier, where Rob is from, and then you've got Lake Champlain. And
Yes. Champ, baby.
so I live in Scotland right now. One of my what do they call those bucket list things was going to
Yes.
Loch Ness, and I did it. I
Hell
went
yes.
there. I've got like I don't know where it is back here. I've got rocks from the loch that I brought back with me.
Oh.
It was a dream come true, man. Like going to one of these places where one of the biggest legends of all time might possibly exist was amazing. However, we have one of those in Lake Champlain in
You
upstate New
sure
York
do.
too.
Yes.
So I've been there. It's a beautiful area. I never found Champ, but it's a legend that lives on. It's a
Yep.
legend that the people there find very a lot of pride in.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of these urban legends really are.
Yeah.
It's that's from my place. I don't care if it exists or not. We're going to have a festival and we're going to have a parade about it. We're going to have speakers come talk about it. And look, if it helps boost the revenue of some like small town that's struggling, awesome. That's
I'm all
what
for it.
Roswell is. That's what
Yep.
the Mothman Festival in West Virginia is. So like
Yep.
Champ is it for me.
Yeah.
That would be the one that I would say in upstate New York that most people probably know about, and they're very proud of it there too.
Oh yeah. Well, you should be. Champ is a legend. As a kid, I remember learning about Champ like in grade school from this like it might have been a Time Life book series, but I remember like, oh my god, we have a Loch Ness monster in America because like Champ is really America's Loch Ness.
Yeah.
So speaking of, Scotland has, like a long history of like the fairy faith and not just fairy tales, but fairy stories where they take it seriously in their culture. And from what I understand, a lot of people still do take it fairly seriously. Have you been able to look into any of that? Like,
Briefly.
Yeah.
I'm still getting my feet wet here with making contacts with individuals in those worlds, in terms of like more of the supernatural stuff or folkloric sort of stuff. So yeah, they are very proud of that. It is a big part of their folklore, and
Right.
they honestly believe it. This isn't
Yeah.
just like, oh yeah, little leprechauns in Ireland or
Yeah.
or whatever it is you have in Scotland.
Yep.
They legitimately believe in these things, and
Yeah.
I think that's awesome.
I do
Again,
too.
it's taking pride in where you're from, the mystery that consumes that area that you call home, and I think that's amazing. So
Mhm.
yeah, in terms of like fairy folk and stuff like that, not so much. But like here in Edinburgh, we have a very rich history. I should say, I am clearly from America. They have a very rich history with witches. So
Ooh.
you go around and there's all these little like witch places where you can learn the history, because there were witch trials here at one point as well. Very violent, very dark.
Yeah.
So that's big. But dude, ghosts is where it's at here.
Yeah.
Everything is haunted. I swear to God, like my dishwasher is haunted.
Yeah.
It's like Everything's so old here. Of course, it's going to
Right.
have a million spirits attached to it. So,
Right. Yeah, you know, when you go a place like Scotland or anywhere else in Europe or anywhere else in the world, really, you realize, oh, America is just such a baby country. We're so
yeah,
new. I mean, like the European side of it is obviously there is traditions going way back from the
right,
indigenous people,
right.
which gets kind of lost in our education system,
Yes,
unfortunately. But yeah, you realize how, in terms of like the structures and the monuments we have here in America, they're so new and shiny still. So
yeah,
yeah, the history of a place like Scotland must just be overwhelming.
right. And it's a given, like I said, for them,
Yeah.
because of that long history and tradition. Where in like America, it's still like
I don't
ghosts.
know. Yeah,
Let me go in there with an EMF reader and I'll tell you if it's a ghost or not. No.
exactly.
You come to Scotland and they're like, yeah, there's 50 ghosts over there right now haunting that place. And it's a given fact.
Oh, I love it, man. I would love to get there one day. That's definitely a place I want to visit just for its beauty, culture. But I also do love Scotch and love me some Ryan Sprague. So
Oh,
hopefully one day, man, before I don't know how long you're going to be in Scotland, but I hope to get there before you leave so we can have a couple cocktails together.
absolutely, brother. You got a place to stay
Oh,
and
man.
I'll get you a kilt and we'll just we'll hike the highlands and make some memories for sure.
Oh, wouldn't that be amazing? I think everyone would love to see us in kilts hiking the Highlands, man. Or nobody.
Yeah, right. That's the picture of the century for
Yeah,
sure.
it is. Right. Well, hey, man. Before we get off, is there anything? Obviously, let's plug Anomicon one more time. But yeah,
Oh, sure.
I'm gonna hand it off to you and let you tell people where they can find you and all that good stuff.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, Anomicon is September 1st and 2nd. I think there's a ghost in my
I
apartment.
just heard that. I did just hear that. What was that, by the way?
That was weird.
That was loud.
Yeah, something fell.
Okay.
Ooh, that is an exclusive right there on High Strangeness.
That's red hot right there, folks. Red hot.
Oh my gosh. Okay, maybe I will need to get an EMF reader.
That was really weird, though. That was a loud sound.
Oh yeah, it looked maybe a dish or something. I'm not sure. What were we talking? Oh, Anomicon.
Yeah, Anomicon.
Yeah. Oof. Okay. Anomicon, September 1st, September 2nd. It's completely free. It's a virtual conference that you can watch right on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, which I think is youtube.com/Ryan Sprague 51. I don't know. Just go to my socials.
I'll link all that. I'll do that for you.
Yes, you do the heavy work, man.
Yeah,
I appreciate
no problem. No problem.
So yeah, completely free. Like I said, 2-day event. You can watch it anytime you want. It's going to be super, super fun. Like I said, a live stream with pre-recorded presentations, of which you are one of the amazing speakers with 35 others, covering everything that we talked about tonight and beyond. But other than that, man, you can catch me on the current season of Ancient Aliens,
Ooh,
of all
awesome.
things, which is hilarious because like they're talking about like the ATIP program and like the congressional hearings eventually, so it's not even Ancient Aliens anymore, it's just aliens.
Yeah.
So
That's
yeah,
awesome, though.
it's fun. I have a good time on there. I've been very critical in the past of the show, but that does not mean that I won't talk about that kind of stuff.
No, yeah, it's good to get your voice out, man. Like,
Yeah.
and also you're a salient voice, potentially, in that
extremely, extremely appreciate that. But yeah, dude, I do the podcast every week, so you can find it wherever you get High Strangeness. And yeah, always working, always writing. I've got a couple books out. You can find everything I do at somewhereintheskies.com.
Oh, man. Well, Ryan, thank you so much. And also thank you again for letting me be part of the Anomicon conference on September 1st and 2nd, folks. This is absolutely free. So this is actually just a really wonderful gift you're giving people. So
it's a gift for me. Like I said, I'm learning along the way. I'm doing this for me. So if anyone else gets anything out of it, awesome.
They will. They may not get it from my weird lecture where I'm going to be talking about some very weird things, but hey, if you like weirdness, maybe tune in. But if you don't, then don't. Ryan, thank you so much, buddy. We are all looking forward to this thing, and it's just going to be. I think it's going to go beautifully. I have a great feeling about it.
Thank you so much, Steve. It was my pleasure, my honor, man. And until next time.
All right, brother. Take care. All right, everyone. You have a great rest of your week. Peace out.